out of the Marine Corps. I was able to put together the best principles to achieve career success in the civilian battlefield. Since then, and in the last 5 years, after my transition, I have successfully used these principles to help hundreds of military veterans achieve their career goals. Now, it's your turn to adopt these principles and make this playbook your own, so you can achieve your greatest career potential. Regardless of military branch, whether you are currently serving or already out of the military, whether you want a job, further your education, start a business, or find a different path altogether, this channel is designed for you. You can now stop feeling anxious, frustrated, and overwhelmed with the 5 W's of your career transition. Through this channel, I will share with you the same principles that have made so many other military veterans successful in their transition. Join me as we master the military transition process through the 6 phases in this playbook. I look forward to you joining our network, sharing your path, and ultimately achieving the success you seek. Please subscribe to the channel to join the journey, and remember, we never leave a fellow veteran behind. Live from the Ugly Chair Studios in Fredericksburg, Virginia, this is the Transition Success Live podcast, where we engage, train, and mentor and coach transitioning veterans for civilian life. Good evening. I am your host, Cesar Nader, and with me is our producer, Abe Erickson. How you doing, Abe?
I'm doing well. How are you, Cesar?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us today on our first podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me and looking forward to it.
Well, today we debut our podcast for the next 52 weeks, where we are going to really get down and dirty with issues that affect my fellow military veterans. So I expect you out there to come out live, ask questions, and challenge me to make sure that I address the issues that you know are afflicting you, and also discuss things that you need to know before you get out there. For those of you who are out, I ask you to join me and help out with those questions, because this is not a one-man show. I expect to be joined by several great speakers, successful veterans, and folks that are still in transition to tell us about how is it going with them.
And Cesar, if you're watching live right now, which you can watch on YouTube, just go to a Military Veteran Transition Playbook on YouTube and watch us live, and please subscribe while you're there. We do have the live chat up, so please, if you have a question, go ahead and type it in the live chat, and if we get to it this evening, we will definitely answer your question.
Now, this Saturday is Veterans Day, so I'm dedicating this podcast to you, my fellow veterans. Thank you for your service. Now, this is very important for most of us. It's just another day in the grind, another day in a fighting hole somewhere out there, another remembrance of a veteran family member who's fallen, who made the ultimate sacrifice. And I can't tell you how inspiring it is when I see my 10-year-old say, "Thank you for your service," to a veteran that's passing by. It inspires me to see towns do parades for their veterans. So I want to dedicate this podcast to all of you, the nearly 25 million veterans in our country. And I want to tell you thank you from the bottom of my heart for not only paving the way for those of us who came after you, but also for those of you who are continuing the tradition of making this the greatest military force on earth. So thank you so much. Now, if you are one of those businesses that support veterans, thank you as well. There's nothing more inspiring than going into a business and reminding a veteran that you offer, say, a military discount, a free service or product, and letting them know, because sometimes veterans don't want to ask. They don't want to ask. It's usually the wife, the kids that have to say, ask them for the military discount. And if you ever seen that, it's sort of a funny, sort of sad situation, because you want the veterans to get the discount or the free service, but they don't like to ask.
Yeah. And
so it's really interesting when I go to a business and now I ask, but then I get we don't have a military discount.
Yeah, it's just to have it as part of your program, as part of your offerings, is a good thing to do, because you never know when someone who is served comes in, because like you say, most veterans, they're not parading around as the veteran, right? They want to continue on with their lives. They gave a heartfelt sacrifice to them and their families for our country. Yet, that sometimes we just don't know that we're walking among great men and women.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'm one of those folks that doesn't like to ask for their military discount. But I've learned now that it is not something that is simply a gift to me. It's an honor for some businesses to really have that opportunity to say thank you. So I ask you out there, if you own a business, if you have a relationship with a local business, ask them to have a military discount, because if they don't have it, it's not that they don't want to do it. It's simply that they haven't had the pleasure of experiencing it and the gratification you get from giving more than just taking. So let's go and talk about one of our listeners' questions. We got a question early on today, and Abe was great enough to put the question in context. So I'd like to start off with a question from Rigo. Rigo is currently a lieutenant colonel, and he was a prior enlisted. And here's what he says. I'm about to be 46, and I feel that valuable time pursuing another career is wasting away. What keeps me up at night is that I will be unemployed and unable to provide for my family. I am anxious and I am nervous. Nevertheless, I am driven to get out there and pursue the next chapter of my life. Where do I begin? I can't tell you how this question resonates with me and with the millions of veterans out there, because that is exactly what we cannot figure out. We get to combat, we're trained for it. We learn how to move, shoot, communicate. We learn how to watch our six. We learn how to do formations, offensive attacks, defensive positions. We learn how to prepare for the battlefield. But when it comes to civilian battlefield, Abe, it's one of those things that escapes our ability to plan, implement, and execute a transition program. So his question...
it's a whole new battlefield, right? I mean, you get trained how to do artillery or infantrymen or whatever, fly aircraft or be on a naval vessel. You have very set regimented ways of doing things. That's why things succeed in the military, right? And we do well on the battlefield. But now it's a brand new one.
And you know, this point he makes, what keeps me up at night, this is not only affecting him, it's affecting your spouse, it's affecting your kids, because your sleepless nights, you're spending them in front of the computer, looking for the resource that will answer your question, what should I do? Now, I'm going to quote Simon Sinek, because he has a great success with the whole start with why, right? And I think that most veterans understand the why they serve, the why they stay, and really the why they are starting to think about transition. What I would tell you, Rigo, and the many veterans out there is start with when. You have to know when you should transition. And that is based on a complement of things that you have to plan for. Your financial picture, your career, where you are in your last deployment or your last assignment. As you know, some assignments are 3 or 2 years, and you have to complete those assignments as part of your payback for either rank or tour or whatever you got in terms of that particular assignment. But you got to start with when. And then you got to also make an assessment of what are your goals. And we'll talk about priorities as we talk about the affirmation quote at the end. But the bottom line is you have to think about how that affects you internally. What keeps you up at night, Rigo, is not that you won't succeed. It's that right now you are trying to figure out which direction in which to mount your attack. What avenue, what course of action, what is your approach to the next challenge? And we're used to having the detailers for the Navy. We have our MOS monitors for the Marine Corps. We have all sorts of resources, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, that allow us to let us know where are we going to go next. Now we're in a situation where we have to be our own monitor, our own detailer, our career counselor. And what's keeping you up at night is that you haven't taken a deep breath and given yourself a solid set of rules, discipline, guidelines, to put you through the most important part of the process. Stop what you're doing and ask yourself, when are you ready to get out? Your financial picture, your personal picture, your family picture, and your career picture. Those 4 quadrants have to be set. And we talk about this in the MVTP as part of phase 1, which starts 2 years out. I get it. You know, you can, I think you were telling me that you're getting out in the spring of 2018. So you're about 6 months out. So you really have to rush through the first 4 phases to get to a point where you're doing phase 5 and 6. So the first thing I want to do for you is address your anxiety. The anxiety you're feeling is partly because you see fellow veterans leaving and looking successful and they got it. The other part of the anxiety is wondering if the decision you make, if that decision you make is going to make sense for you and your family. And I can tell you that for the most part, almost every veteran is able to successfully transition into a career, provided that they stop, disciplinely take a look at where they are, and map their route to where they're going. We're going to talk about an article later on some of the trends of organizations that are hiring veterans. But before we get there, I want to make sure that you are understanding that this is not uncommon. Your anxiety is typical, all of us. I went through it when I was getting out in 2011. For 2 years, I had in the back of my little green book a calendar, and I crossed every day with an X, the day closer to my retirement date, our terminal date, which is a word that I still can't get used to. They call it terminal leave, as if you're pretty much done. But I think that is something you need to understand. It's normal. That anxiety is simply your natural adrenaline rush that comes from saying, when can I get there? And did you hear what I said? When can I start fighting? When can I start, achieving that next chapter? That's critical. Start with when. Once you figure out when you want to get out, then you have to assess who you are. Not what you're going to do, but who you are. Take account, do an audit, and make sure you are assessing who you have become. Now, I tell this to a lot of the folks that I help transition on a one-on-one basis and in groups. You should have a 3 to 5 personal board of advisors. Not just your wife, not your CO, your commanding officer, not somebody who always praises you, or your mom. You want to have a complement of people who know you well, right? Your most impressive coach when you were in high school. The guy that knew that you had what it took to become a military member. Your most trusted military fella, right? Certainly your wife or your husband, and then 2 other people that you admire, whether professionally, personally, spiritually. A church is a great place for people to actually find the right mentorship. So talk to your pastor, talk to those folks that are actually out there looking out for you. You get a 5 board of advisors, and you ask them to tell you, what are your best qualities? Start making an inventory of who you are. All right? Look into your leadership tool bag and ask yourself, what do I have there that I have used consistently in every area of my career? And then start to really figure out honestly, versus what you have done in your career as a military person, what are you passionate about? What do you know you can do if you just had the opportunity? Now, in phase 4, the how, I talk about either being an entrepreneur, investor, business owner, employed by private sector, public sector, nonprofit, retire, write a book. We talk about the different areas because there's not one path for all of us. But the anxiety that you have starts to just go down when you start to figure out who you are. Because once you figure out who you are, just like when you put that uniform on and you're getting ready for either the event you're going to, your day of work, or even combat, you have no anxiety at that point. All you want to do is get to what is the objective. And that's phase 3. The what comes after when and after who. When do I get out? Who am I? What am I going to do? Those 3 phases have to be done early in your transition process. That's going to calm your anxiety. And that's going to stop making you nervous, because I hear you. I hear you through your words that you're just worried about the family. Because you know, I get it. I know you'll make it. You'll get on your feet again, but it's the family. You don't want to fail them. You see your other fellow veterans get out and be successful, or they appear to be successful, and you just want to know how. And I'll tell you one more thing while I'm at it. And I say this to every fellow veteran. It takes 2 years after you're out to fully transition and integrate yourself into civilian life. And I'm not talking about letting your hair grow. I'm not talking about you stop wearing your military shirts that say, been there, done that. I'm talking about a full transition, spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, and physically. It takes about 2 years to finally stop worrying about waking up in the morning and being late for work. Or did you put in for leave? Or do you have to go to sick bay? And I know some of you out there are smiling about it, because you're thinking, that's exactly what I did when I got out. It's almost like the first day you were out, you were thinking, somebody's going to call me because I'm UA, unauthorized absence. And when you hear on TV that there's another battle being brewed, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get recalled. Calm down. You're not going to get recalled, all right? Unless you're a reservist, unless you're in the IRR, unless you are not retired but in transition, or you want to switch services. But that's another subject. I want to try to focus. And Abe, you got to keep me focused, because I know I'll just keep steering away.
Well, there's something in Rigo's question that struck me, and it's the age part. Because how many people, Cesar, are you hearing, am I even employable because of my age? Because there's so much in the media about jobs going to the younger generations, and it's, is there going to be anything for me out there? And I think that's going to be good with the article we talked about. But what do you hear, and what encouragement do you provide to individuals like Rigo? It's like, hey, I'm kind of getting up there in age.
I was talking to a global company, that was and we're talking about the article, by the way. We're referencing the article because this article is really critical to understanding how organizations think about hiring veterans and where's the gap. But I was talking to this global company who was telling me that they really weren't getting a good feel for some of the talent that was out there in the military. And they had a lot of young folks that wanted to come in and apply, but they wanted that mid-management level talent. And Rigo's going to be 46. And I don't know about you, I'm 46. And I'm feeling very young. And I feel like it's not a matter of whether the age is a factor. It's really what you present when you are out there in an interview, and how confident you are able to present your skill sets, your persona, your character, the foundational issues that make anybody and everybody employable. Because there are some organizations that, yes, they're going to discriminate. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you here. And I know a lot of you are out there going to submit your comments and tell me about, well, Cesar, this is not true because I was discriminated. Hey, I get it, all right? Some people love cats, some people love dogs. And a dog is never going to get an interview and get hired for a cat's job, okay? But there are times when you can really break the mold on the perception that age is going to be a factor. And I truly believe, after going to at least over 100, about 140 interviews, screenings, 40 plus sit-down interviews, and 11 job offers, I was excited that I got a chance to explore all those options. And not once did I factor in, was I too old for this job? And I was 41 at that time. So I don't think that's going to be a factor. Let me end with this. Rigo says, where do I begin? I can give you a lot of resources, and I'm sure you're out there, and there's plenty of resources. I certainly, I would recommend and I endorse every military transition program out there. It is a free resource. It's at your base location or post. You have to take advantage of that. While they may not be the perfect solution, it is an incredible incredible opportunity for you to start and know what you have there. You can fill in the gaps. And I got to tell you, this program is intended to enhance and complement that military transition program on base. So that's where I would start on one front. On another front, I told you, get a 3 to 5 board of advisors to help you navigate that. I'll be happy to support you. You can contact us on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Did I miss one, Abe?
That's it.
And I'm learning this, so I'm not the social bug that I need to be in order for this stuff to work, but I know there's ways that you can communicate with us. And if I don't have the answer, I will find a fellow veteran who is going to match with your path, even your service. Yeah, I'm a Marine, but it doesn't mean that I don't understand Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard. But if you prefer to have a fellow veteran from the same category, fine. If you're a female, if you are younger, if you're older, I will find you the veteran that you feel is going to suit you best for that board of advisors. So I would say that's critical, because then you can start the conversation. And 3, I cannot stress this enough. Start with win. Attend our events. We have one coming up in March in DC for the MVTP, the Military Veteran Transition Program. And we are going to discuss all 6 phases at large. We're going to have a great support from a lot of companies out there who are looking to hire. And we're going to dispel some of these myths about age or about location. And we're going to talk about what is it that they see from their organization that they're not understanding from a veteran's perspective. Okay? So, Rigo, I hope I answered your question. You have my phone number. You got my email. You can call me or text me. And I'm going to continue to support you. I'm going to follow you through your transition, and we're going to see how this goes. But your question, I got to tell you, was invaluable, because a lot of us, if not all of us, have that anxiety that fills us at night. It keeps us up, and we're online trying to figure it out. We're asking questions on LinkedIn. We're trying to find out who's got the answer for what am I supposed to do in my transition. You come to the right place. We're going to take care of you, and we're going to make sure that you have a successful transition. All right, so I want you to join me like Rigo did. If you have any questions like him, I see that our YouTube feed is coming through. We're getting a lot of stuff here. If you have a question from our audience, Abe, let me know. But please follow us on Twitter at Cesar E. Nader. That's me. There's a lot of similar Naders and a lot of Cesars, but I am Cesar E. Nader, and I will answer your questions. I will reply to you either on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. What did I miss? YouTube, or even live. We're going to add a live feed to our show that will allow us to take callers in. And once we do that, we'll be able to get your live questions. All right, Abe, where are we now? Are we ready to start that article?
Yeah, let's jump into that article really fast. So let me make sure I'm live so everyone can hear me. So this is there was a survey that was done by the Korn Ferry Future Step. And they surveyed almost 1,000 organizations, businesses, the bulk of them being small businesses, and wanted to know how their approach to veterans has changed over the years. Okay, and there were a few takeaways that I thought was interesting. The first one I want to talk about is what were the top 3 military skill sets that these organizations wanted. Go for it. Time
out. I got to cut you off. I mean, look, and by the way, this show is going to be very unconventional. All right, I was just looking at our YouTube feed here, and Rigo actually joined us on YouTube, and he's letting me know I made a mistake. He's not retiring in 2018. He's actually retiring in 2019. So this is actually perfect, because he's essentially taking exactly the right steps about 18 months at this point to try to figure out his retirement. So Rigo, I'm sorry, I owe you 20 push-ups. I will make sure that Abe watches me complete those 20 push-ups, yes. But I wanted to make sure if you're out there and you want to hire Rigo, hold your pattern there. We still got over a year of him serving our country, so you know he's going to have to wait. But thank you for that correction, Rigo. I appreciate it. Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, thank you, Rigo, and thanks for joining us. And if you're watching live and you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so, and then spread the word. This is invaluable information that most of our active and even retired military personnel can definitely benefit from. So returning to this survey that was conducted, the top 3 military skills that these organizations honed in on that said that would translate best to a management role at their company, number 1 is leadership. 45% of their organization said leadership, right up there. Okay, team mentality, and then goal focus. So those are the top 3. Now Cesar, tell me a little bit about, from military training, where leadership, team mentality, and goal focus can all come from, and how that would benefit veterans transitioning into a corporate work environment.
This is the foundation of our military training. I mean, you learn this from day one in recruiting training. In recruit training. You have to learn to take over as a leader. And it's not a question of whether you have it in you. You know, there's a dynamic that happens during recruit training. But what I've realized is whether you are a natural leader, as they call them, natural born leaders, or you are a grown leader, the military has an exceptional ability to help anyone learn to plan, implement, execute. And that leadership flushes out in times of crisis, when we talk about the fog of war, or when we talk about how are we going to move personnel and materials from point A to point B. That's the simplest example. You can translate this into anything. Every service has a planning process that allows anyone to come up with courses of action and ultimately a decision-making process that executes a plan. And that forges that leadership talent that allows our military personnel to be exceptional in the civilian sector. Because in the civilian organizations, in the private sector, even public sector, it's not so much that they lack leadership. It's that the military veteran is effective at identifying the gap. The military veteran, male, female, is effective at being able to see a situation happening and providing recommendations, or as we call them, courses of action, to close that gap, to bridge that hole, to enable the senior management to execute effectively. And while in the civilian sector, the profits are what drives, a lot of the decisions, for the military member, it's the ability to contribute and provide a solution. We are always solution driven. We must find a way to meet the goal. So there's no secret that military veterans are extremely good at this process of building that leadership in your organization. They're effective at cross-pollinating with those efforts. Now, there are other qualities that allow an individual, as a personality, just the personality of an individual, to be able to inspire others versus repel them, because sometimes you can come out too strong.
Sure.
So if you, like I said, if you get out of the military, it'll take about 2 years to transition. So you got to be a little more relaxed. I'll give you a story real quick. We helped a sergeant major or first sergeant get a job at one of the builders. I'll just say it was either a Lowe's or a Home Depot. I won't tell you which one, but it was a challenge for him because he wanted to go in there and have the whole team come 15 minutes out, check the aisles, do what we call a police call, which is essentially picking up the trash. And wanted to have everybody organized by aisle. Who's got aisles 1, 2, 3? Who's got aisles 4 through 6? And and I know some of my audience here are laughing because they know that that's exactly what we do in the military, right? And we know how important it is to be prepared and ready. But imagine a group of professional Lowe's employees or Home Depot employees or ACE employees, and they're hearing this first sergeant saying, all right, here's the plan. We're going to go out there, and we're going to start policing the aisles one by one. And I want you posted on aisle 2 and covers 1 to 3. Your sector of fire is 5 to 6. I think by the end of the week or month, it was really clear that he had not really connected. So while leadership was exploding out of him, right, his personality was still catching up to what essentially is just a job where you can really integrate yourself with others. Now it's a very hard to the right example here, but those are the qualities that we look for in a lot of our civilian hires. As a company owner, I'm always looking for that natural leader that's going to come in and help me grow the company. You talked about team mentality and goal focus. That's essentially another name for military veteran. I mean, we don't do anything on our own. And there's a great quote out there that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go farther, go with a team. And that's exactly what the military veteran can bring, that whole sense of team mentality. Because we understand from a leadership principle standpoint how to use people in accordance with their capabilities. And we're all able to bring in something to the fight. So it's always important to find a way to explain that to an organization. How are you able to bring a team together so you're not the focus of attention, but rather the person that's lifting everyone up? And goal focus, it's what drives, I think, most units. The ability to achieve the mission. We call it the mission. In this case, your organization is going to talk about the goal.
Yeah, great. Now, I think what's very interesting about this is that there's definitely a new trend that's developed over the past 5 years, according to this survey. They surveyed that about a third of the organizations are having more emphasis now on hiring veterans than they did 5 years ago. Okay. Now, to me, that's a really, really good sign that the smaller organizations are putting that thought process together. Okay. What the problem is, what the gap is that these hiring managers haven't had experience with veterans, at least in a hiring capacity, right? So the hiring manager doesn't really know how to organize an outreach program to draw in qualified veterans, or when they're actually interviewing them, they don't necessarily know what the right questions are. And this, to me, is a good opportunity for a veteran to prepare themselves to help facilitate this discussion about, here's my military experience, here's how it's really going to benefit you, hiring manager, and for your organization. In fact, one of the leads on this, Mr. Sebra, said, from the perspective of the veteran who is seeking to make the transition to a civilian career, it's important to take time to educate hiring managers on how their military experiences can translate into a corporate environment. So I think that's the opportunity for veterans now. Organizations are putting more emphasis on hiring them, and they just don't know how to go about it yet. And so that's the green light for the veteran to jump in.
You have two great points there. Number one, that there's a big improvement that has happened in the last 5 years on organizations really hiring veterans. When I was getting out, Amazon was catching on to the idea that if you hire a military veteran, your productivity is going to increase. It was just a natural understanding. And part of that understanding flows into your next point, which is that having a veteran hiring program, it's almost as critical as understanding your bottom line. It's not so much that we're trying to promote one group of the population. It's that you just got yourself somebody else who trained somebody, grew someone, shaped them, made them lean, and is putting them right in front of you for you to just decide where you're going to put them. Because the military veteran is so flexible, adaptable, scalable in terms of what they can do. And there is, of course, there's always a 10%, right? It doesn't matter where you are. So there's always a 10%.
Yeah.
So don't start beating me up about every single statement I make because there's always going to be an exception to the rule. But the military veteran is a civilian who was taken at 18, 19 and shaped into this, forged into this amazing professional with a specific set of goals, mission accomplishment, leadership development, right?
Yep.
The ability to operate in the cold, in the heat, rain, storm, underwater, in the air. I mean, I love Marvel movies and DC movies.
Yeah.
I mean, the military veteran is the epitome of where we got those ideas, in my opinion. And I don't say that just to patronize people, but it's the truth. And organizations are missing out on the opportunity to have a professional, certifiable, and effective veterans hiring program. I'll give you an example. I did an event for an organization, a civilian organization, a huge organization. And I sat down with the leadership, and they told me that they had a recruiting team that would go to certain bases to recruit a certain type of military veteran. I said, well, the type of veteran you want, it's not going to be there. You're going to the wrong bases. Now, it's no secret. We have different services take different parts of the population to become their military force. The ASVAB test is the test that every civilian has to take in order to be qualified, to be known, okay, what are your skill sets and requirements that you're going to be able to have to be a military veteran. Air Force takes a chunk of those, Navy. They take the folks that have, they prefer to take the folks that have a higher GT scores. In Army, Marine Corps, they have ceilings and floors that they'll take a different part of the population. I was on the subfloor, just to be clear. I think I scored 36 or 34, and I needed a waiver just to stay in the Corps. But to the point, when you are looking for a certain type of veteran, you have to know where to go. You have to know where to find them, and you have to speak their language because they're not out yet. And just because your logo is on the Fortune 500, or because your business is doing great and you want to have more of those great people, it's not going to translate for them. Just as you want veterans to understand how to speak civilian when they're doing an interview, you need to speak military when you're trying to hire them. Because they're going to be attracted to your mission, to your purpose, to what drives the company. And I'm telling you, it is 99% accurate. There are priorities that we set out to get when we want to work for an organization. It may be the name, it may be where they are in the world, location, or it just may be job satisfaction. Now, I'll talk about those three priorities. But for the most part, veterans want to know what you're about. And it has to make sense for us in order for us to say, I see myself in that organization. And if you don't have a veteran hiring program, you can't mold your message, adapt your message to that veteran population. And I am telling you that is very critical. Organizations that do succeed, organizations that don't struggle. Right? Now, you said one more thing about veteran-specific hiring practices. When I was at this organization that wanted to hire veterans, I asked them, I said, do you guys know how many veterans you have in your organization? And they didn't know. They didn't know how many veterans they had. So in this particular case, we were at the headquarters, and we walked out to the floor where they were. It was a big call center. And I literally just did one of my Marine moments, and I said, radio check or something like that. And everybody looked as if, there was some alarm probably happened. But I said, how many of you are veterans? Raise your hand. And about 15 of them raised their hand. And I looked at the leadership and I said, there's your veteran hiring program startup team. And you have the opportunity to look into your organization right now and source those veterans to let you hear what it is that attracted them to your organization, so you can plaster those into a practice program that can be promoted out there and given on a one sheet, 3 bullets, or a very succinct message that says why veterans come to work here. So you already have the resource. Now, how to use it, how to shape it, how to mold it, again, that's your decision. You can hire a veteran that's mid-level management, like we talked about earlier, a leader like Rigo, who, like most veterans, has leadership, operational, management experience because they have cross-pollinated into different units, which you would call departments, and can really effectively help you put that plan together. Remember, plan, implement, and execute. Okay?
So Cesar, as we've been talking here, Cesar, we've got a couple questions that came through
I noticed that.
from Thomas G, and I think this is a good place to segue into that.
Yeah, what does Thomas G want to know?
He wants to know, first of all, are there any tips for negotiating salary? Now, this is a big one, right? Because you need to, what's the three focus points: location,
Job satisfaction, and salary.
And salary, right?
Right.
So this is a good place. Let's answer Thomas's question here. Let's start with the salary part.
So if I read Thomas G question, he was also talking about retirement pay be a non-factor. Okay, so Tom, I don't know what you want to be called. Here's what I think, right? And Abe alluded to this. There's one thing I ask people to prioritize before they decide when. You have to know what's your top priority, okay? If you choose right, you'll have a career. If you choose wrong, you'll have a job and a job and a job and a job. You can never have all three. But if you're lucky, you'll get 2 out of those 3. And these are the 3 priorities. You have to know what's the most important for you. And there is no wrong answer, but you have to be honest. Is it salary, job satisfaction, or location? This is where you go consult with your 3 to 5 personal board of advisors, because they will make you accountable. If you say, oh, it's job satisfaction, no. You've been talking about paying all that debt. Like Dave Ramsey says, you pay off your debt.
That's right.
But you're going to try to convince them that, oh, no, it's altruistic. I really want job satisfaction. When you really want to get the job with the most compensation so you can pay off your debt, put your family in a better place. Again, there's no wrong answer. On the flip side, there are folks say, oh, it's salary. When in fact, it's location. But you're afraid to say location because you believe that because Johnny B got the job at a higher pay, then you have to beat Johnny B's salary because you're better than Johnny B. You got meritorious promoted. He didn't. You were always on the ball. He wasn't. Right? So you have to ask yourself what's truly going to satisfy you when you transition. It could be job satisfaction. It could be salary. It could be location. You may want to go back home. I have a great friend, Jim, who refused to take a 6-figure salary in the Northern Virginia area to go back to Montana. I say, what's in Montana? Family.
And is he thriving?
He is not only thriving, he's happy. His wife and his 2 kids, they're happy. And I asked him, what are you going to do? He said that he had a friend who had a business that they installed blue tarps. Now I got to tell you, that's the difference between quality of life and standard of living. And you have to ask yourself what you want to do. So to your question, Thomas G, when you're negotiating salary, and again, this is my personal belief, so I don't care what anybody else out there says. If they want to say something, they can start their own show and have their own opinion. But I got to tell you that a lot of people say, don't talk salary until the end. I like to talk salary up front. Only so I can understand what's the value you're putting on that position, what's your priority, what is the need, and how does that fit my priorities. If my priority of salary is the third one, so if I say my priority is job satisfaction, and now we'll do it as long as I am on the West Coast. And salary is not an issue for me. I save money, I have investments, my wife works, so I'm willing to negotiate a certain salary. But if salary is very important to you, because it meets certain needs, then number one, you should know your worth. First step, how do you negotiate salary? First step, basic, 101. Go to salary.com, go to indeed.com, go to glassdoor.com, type in the job or career that you're looking for or the job that you're applying for. This is free resources out there. You can look at what you're worth in the level of manager that you're. It's just no different than TrueCar, right? You want to know what is that position paying nationally, regionally, and even within that state or within that industry. That's one. Number two, understand the difference between salary and compensation. You have to know that right off the bat. See, in the military, we know that we get a salary and the rest of the benefits are taken care of. Now you have a tough job to figure out what are those benefits and what those benefits are worth. Medical, dental, vision, short-term and long-term disability, PTO. I didn't say PT. You guys know what PT is, right? But PTO, paid time off, what we called leave.
How many push-ups are you supposed to be doing, by the way?
20.
20.
Why, somebody's asking?
Oh, we're just making sure.
Hoorah. Hoorah. So you have to know the value of your compensation package. I was obsessed with understanding this, so I made a matrix that I had the 15 factors that affected my decision. Everything from salary, medical, how much travel was included, anything that I learned in those 42 interviews that I did, I wrote down as another factor to calculate my decision. And you guys are gonna either love or hate this comment. I was so obsessed with understanding this that I created a risk assessment matrix. Yes, I know some of you out there are gonna just
Nerd.
laugh.
Nerd.
Yeah, you're gonna get on the floor and laugh. You're gonna say, I get it, Cesar. I'm just like you. Green, yellow, red, my friends. I did it that way. So I can really see what's the color code, and it would help me decide on the best job offer. Of those 11 offers that I had, I was able to color code them to decide what was the one that I liked. And I know some of you out there are gonna ask me, like, what did you decide to do? If you know what I do on LinkedIn, then you know what my decision was. But the point is that you have to understand what the compensation package is worth, because that's a complement to your salary. Now, one of the things I learned in my transition was that I think for every 10 miles closer to DC, it was another $1,000 that I would be willing to accept. So think about that. If you're living way south, if you're from Virginia, you understand what I'm talking about. Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is where we're located.
Yeah.
How far are we from DC?
We're about 60 miles south.
60 miles, so that's $6,000 more than if I work from home. So you see, there's a negotiation strategy. If I'm able to work for you in Fredericksburg, I'm willing to calculate about $5,000 play there in the salary. So if you're gonna offer me 90 and I want it 95, then the question is, can I work out of Fredericksburg?
Yeah.
The answer is no, then I have to put that in my risk matrix. Like, you know what? That's because I'm going to spend at least 2 hours, if not longer,
At least.
in traffic going into DC.
Yep.
Then there's parking, and that again, that's time with the kids, or that's time with the spouse, or time with the dog, or that's time just with you. Right? You can't go to the gym. You're too late.
We had some friends that were considering, should we live in Fredericksburg, should we live closer to DC? Husband is a Capitol Hill police officer, Capitol Police. Well, how much time do you want to spend together? Because your quality of life totally changes. And this is the same with every metropolitan area across the country.
You see what he said, quality of life?
Yeah, I mean, it's, okay,
That's
yeah,
key.
you can, your house will be much more affordable in Fredericksburg. He's going to be on the road 4 hours a day, minimum.
Now, I didn't say that that's bad,
Nope.
guys.
Nope.
Right? Gals, listen to me. Mm-hmm. If salary is critical to you, you have to be willing to accept the sacrifice that come with that. Now, you may have the greatest job. You're getting paid a ton of money. You live right near your job, and it's in the location you want. I'm willing to bet that that's truly not the case, because nobody can get all the money they want at the location they want in the perfect job that they want. There's always something. You have to give up a little bit of something.
Yeah, and for them, that was their trade-off, right? Sure, cheaper house, less time together. So we'll go up a little closer. Still same salary in his case. Salary wasn't changing because he got his job. But that's just the decision you have to make. Location was where they chose for the time.
And it goes back to salary, location, or job satisfaction. Look, you're going to have other factors that affect your decision, but they all fall into these 3 buckets.
Yeah.
Location, salary, or job satisfaction. Now, another negotiation factor, and he asked retirement, right? That should be a non-factor. Anybody who's using your retirement to leverage your salary, just walk away.
And make sure you don't do it to yourself.
Exactly.
Right?
Walk away. Now, I've never asked in any of my interviews, are you retired? It's just not a question that is that should be asked, and you retire military, you will naturally, my fellow veterans are naturally going to say, I'm retired, because it adds a value to the organization. It says you were committed to an organization for a longer period of time. Nothing against not being retired 20 years. Some of the best people that work for me are folks that did 4, 6, 7 years. Brandon is one example of a guy that is just a storm. I cannot believe the Marine Corps let him go, but I was happy to take him. But when you say you're retired, you're basically telling people, I got some money coming in. That still shouldn't be a factor in your negotiation, because what you're negotiating is the value of that position, not what you have and how they can get it at a discount, right? This is not a sale here. You are valued. You're probably valued more if you have certain factors, which is what I'm going to get into. But your retirement benefits should never be a factor in that proposition, even though some of us get a relocation allowance on our last move. Now, you can negotiate that. There's nothing that says you can't negotiate something for it, but don't let them use it against you, right? The relocation piece is essentially, you're basically going to pay your relocation, but you can say, how about instead of you relocating me, you pay my closing costs for the house I'm going to buy? Listen, there's nothing you cannot negotiate. All you got to do is open your mouth and ask for it. And if that person doesn't know it, have them ask somebody else. The organization that values you, it's going to take you and it's going to pay you what you're worth. And it's going to give you a compensation package that's going to be valuable. But you have to educate yourself, guys and gals. You have to educate yourself on what's the worth of a benefits package. That's where you should be spending your late nights not sleeping. The last thing I discussed was the other factors, the other things that you can bring onto the table, which are benefits like living closer, or in some cases, some of your jobs require clearances. So I always tell people to figure out what is a clearance worth, because a fellow military veteran without a clearance and a fellow military veteran with a clearance can do jobs that this fellow veteran can't do, just the way it is, because it's a classified nature of the work. Now, in some organizations, the private sector, that may not play, but if you're looking for a federal contracting job or federal agency job, that clearance is worth more money to you. How much is subjective? I'll give you my opinion, right? If you have a secret clearance, I'd say about $2,500 more. If you have a TS clearance, I'd say $5,000 more. And you can negotiate from there. If you come out of an agency that your future or your prospect employer sees as a value add to their organization, you have negotiating tips there. So you really have to organize yourself. You see how this thing is starting to come together? You have to really figure out what you're worth. You have to put on paper, not your name with big name there and say retired captain, retired colonel, retired sergeant major. Leave that out, please. Trust me, all right? Best advice that I'm going to give you on advice. Here it goes. This is really critical, and I say this a lot. Best advice on advice. Number one, don't get real estate advice from people who don't own a house. Fair? Don't get money advice from broke people. Right? Broke people always like to give you advice. And number three, and most important and relevant, don't get resume, transition, or career advice from people who have neither transitioned nor are on the table of how to hire or provide hiring advice. Your recruiters out there, your HR managers, your hiring managers, those folks, those are people who can give you some good intel. But remember, everybody gives their opinion from their vantage point. So take that and overlap it with what people say. Some people say don't do an objective on your resume. Some say do. It's all up to you. What do you got?
And that's why Cesar's in that chair. Transition Success, baby. Transition Success podcast.
Hoorah.
Right here.
Hoorah, hoorah.
All right.
So Thomas G, I hope I answered your question, and I wanted to make it a longer answer because I want everybody out there to get the benefit of negotiating salary. I tell you, I never get offended when people ask me when they're negotiating salary with me and say, well, I want to make let me put a number, 75 or 95. And I asked them, why do you think you're worth 95?
Right.
If the position says that there's a band of 80 to 90, what? And they say, well, here's why. And you know what impresses me is that they take the time to confidently and effectively just provide me with an opportunity to understand why. And if they do that, you know what? That's somebody who's probably going to make 10 times more in profit for the organization because they methodically thought about that question I asked before I even did. That's a person you want to hire because that individual has planned this out and considered all of their options, and they want to make sure that they present to you an offer that you can accept fairly. Now, there are some circumstances you cannot change what the salary bands are in a big organization. So be mindful, this is not going to be successful all the time. But what's the worst thing that can happen if you ask?
Yeah.
All right?
That's right. Caesar, we are going to make a change to our plan here because we have an excellent question from Brandon on YouTube. Talking about establishing his cadre of mentors, where should he be looking? Should it consist entirely of veterans? What about civilians? Should college professors be a part of that? Where are good places for him to start looking to put together that board to help him transition?
Excellent. Brandon, thanks for that question. So take away the titles. You said, professors, family. Take away the titles. I want you to think right now of the first person that comes to mind when you think of someone you admired when you were young. That's your first board member right there. That's it. Do the same exercise for the rest of the positions that you're hiring your board members for. All right? This is your personal board of advisors. Who is the person or persons you do this to? I don't have my phone. I'm going to use my mouse. You know the person you're texting all the time when you have a problem? The person that knows you at your worst? The person that you trust with an answer when you have nowhere else to go? Those are the people that are going to strengthen your decision process because they know you. You did mention a professor, so go back to that person who inspired you to do something that has made you who you are today. That's your third member. Fourth member, look, I have to vouch for the spouse. I don't want any husband or wife to come in here and start throwing me their shoe. So please include your spouse, all right? And include her or him because they're invested in this. You may consider not including them if you feel like their anxiety is higher than your anxiety and their emotional state will affect the decision. You want people with practical advice, people who are not going to BS you. People who are going to tell you, if they say, you're going to love this, if you want to go to America's Got Talent because you think you can sing, and Abe says, Cesar, you can't sing, I'm going to listen to Abe because he's probably heard me sing, and I do not want Simon Cowell to tell me how terrible, how I sounded like a Latin cat on a full moon. So listen to the advice of the people you want to trust. And once you give them that title of your personal board of advisors, seek them with an effective question. Don't just call and just abuse their time. Really ask them to give you some feedback. First question I would ask is, what do you remember I was really good at? Because see, this is why this is important, right? Because we talked about the board of advisors, but we didn't say why. So why it is because you put the uniform on and you do it for 4 years, 6 years, 10 years, 15, 20, some of us 30 years. So you forgot what you were passionate about back before you put the uniform on. I'll give you an example. I do seminars where I'll ask people, raise your hand if you're a leader. How many of you think, raise your hands?
30%.
100%.
Ah, good.
And I always think somebody's lying. Because some of us don't want to be leaders.
Yeah.
We just want a job where we can do our God-given gift, whether it's accounting, whether it's intel, whether it's operations, logistics. Heck, driving an Uber car. Look at me, I'm talking about an Uber as if it's an actual
There you go.
thing.
Yeah.
There's a plug.
Yeah, right.
So some of us just maybe want to be a coach. Maybe you want to write a book. You don't have to stress about being a leader because you have been transformed. You know, Gladwell says that it takes 10,000 hours to become a professional. So do you realize that you have become that professional because you have done more than 10,000 hours in that profession? So it's hard to unplug and figure out who you are if all you think you are is what you do. Yeah. If you're always doing comm, or you're an infantry professional, or you are air traffic controller, you find that as your path for transition. It is an easy transition, don't get me wrong. There's nothing that says you can't do it. If you've been doing it for 10, 5, 15 years, just do it. But if you want to find what you're truly passionate about, remember, prioritize. Decide on quality of life or standard of living. And then figure out where you're going to be the most passionate about in your career. And that will lead you to the career that you want to go to. Otherwise, you're just going to have a job and you're just going to be satisfied with the path of least resistance. So, it's been a great program. I think we're at the top of our...
We are.
Man, we just got
started. It went by fast. We had fun, didn't we?
Did we miss any questions? I don't want to miss anybody's question here.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think we got them.
We'll answer your questions online or on one of our social media outlets. But I'd like to end, we're going to try to end every program with an affirmation quote or an inspirational quote. And this is relevant, okay? I'm going to read it to you. The author's unknown. So if you're out there, you know, please claim it. You have to decide what your highest priorities are and have the courage, pleasantly, smilingly, non-apologetically, to say no to other things. And the way to do that is by having the bigger, yes, burning desire inside of you. That is critical because as you have this anxiety, what's eating you up, it's all of the options that you think you have or that you want to pursue, because you don't want to let anything fall off your plate. You want to try to make sure everything's in. I could stay in, I could get out. Maybe I can do another job. Maybe I can change this unit for the... Calm down. Focus on what is your burning yes. What are you just so eager to do? Figure out when you want to do it. And then decide who you are before you decide what to do. Now the last three phases, the how to do it, the where to find the connection with the mentors, and the act phase of our 6-phase MVT program is the longer, hard road. Once you build that roadmap, you can start traveling that roadmap knowing that where are the gaps in your plan. But find the burning yes. And when you find that burning yes, attack it with everything you got. I promise you that passion is going to come through for all the folks that are trying to find people like you, the organizations that are trying to find qualified professionals like the military. All right, so I want to thank you for watching the Transition Success Podcast. Abe Erickson, our producer, has done a great job at instilling this. Thank you, Abe. I think that it's amazing that he's put this together on a very short notice, but we wanted to do this show because Veterans Day is coming, and this was very important to really, step out with the right foot and hit the ground running.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we will be live next Wednesday at 2000.
That's correct.
For those of us who don't understand that, that's 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's, what is it on the West Coast? 5 p.m. or 1700 Eastern Pacific Time or West Coast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like us on Facebook. Talk to us on Twitter. And let us know next time what are your burning questions for transition. Transition success coming to you. Good night. And remember, we never leave a fellow veteran behind. We're with you. Semper Fi.
Good night, America.